Welcome to Kids Beyond the Pitch, the Kids for the World podcast exploring the impact of football kits on sustainability, social change, and the broader sports industry's environmental responsibility.
We all love those moments, those aha moments when you realize something you thought was simple actually has, like hidden depths. And get ready for a big one. Today, we're diving deep on the surprising value of amateur football. Not the pros, not the big leagues, just everyday people, Kicking a ball around for the love of the game. You'd think it's just a bit of fun, right? Turns out, the impact goes way beyond the pitch.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is we can actually measure that impact. We're not just talking like anecdotes and warm, fuzzy feelings. We're talking hard data and some seriously impressive figures.
Okay, you've got my attention. So where are we diving in today?
Our source is the UEFA Grow model. It's all about calculating the social return on investment, or SROI, of amateur football. And it's not just, some pie-in-the-sky estimate. This model was developed with universities and validated by heavy hitters like the EU and the World Health Organization. They're looking at the costs and benefits in a seriously comprehensive way.
So it's like a full-blown economic analysis, but for something we usually think of as like purely recreational.
Exactly. And the results are eye-opening. The annual social value of amateur football in the Netherlands alone is estimated at a staggering 5.23 billion.
5 billion. That's like the GDP of a small country. How can just playing football at a local level generate that kind of value?
Yeah, let's break it down, because it's not just about like money changing hands directly. This figure represents the ripple effect across 3 key areas: social impact, economic contribution, and healthcare savings.
Okay, I'm following. Social impact, I can imagine that's huge. But how do you even begin to put a number on that?
Well, think about all the ways amateur football brings people together. You've got players, coaches, referees, volunteers, a whole ecosystem of people working together, forming bonds, building a sense of community. And that's not even mentioning the spectators and local businesses that get involved. It creates a unique social network, a kind of social capital that strengthens communities from within. The model quantifies this by looking at factors like volunteer hours, training programs, and employment generated by amateur football, putting a price tag of 1.42 billion on that social impact in the Netherlands.
That's a pretty powerful number. So strong communities, check. What about the economic side of things?
Well, that's where we see the direct financial benefits. Players are spending money on equipment, travel, membership fees. All of that goes back into the local economy. Plus, amateur football employs over 100,000 people in the Netherlands. Not just coaches and staff, but also roles in related businesses like, equipment suppliers and sports facilities. This economic contribution is valued at 1.27 billion annually.
Okay, so we've got social good and money flowing. That's already a pretty impressive double whammy. But you mentioned healthcare savings. I'm struggling to connect the dots on that one.
This is where it gets really interesting. Think about the health benefits of regular physical activity. Reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, improved mental health. All of this translates to a healthier population, which means lower healthcare costs over the long term. In the Netherlands, those savings are estimated at a whopping 2.54 billion annually.
Wait, so lacing up your boots is basically a public health initiative? That's wild. But 2.54 billion is still a huge chunk of that overall figure. What exactly are they factoring in?
It's a combination of direct savings on treatment for those conditions, as well as the broader benefits of improved well-being. They even have a category called subjective well-being, which captures the overall improvement in happiness and quality of life associated with playing amateur football. They put a value of 2.1 billion on that alone.
So it's not just about preventing specific diseases, it's about fostering a sense of well-being. That has a ripple effect on health.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. I'm starting to see why the Netherlands is the poster child for this whole SROI thing. Is there something special about Dutch amateur football, or is this just a really good example?
There are definitely some factors that make the Netherlands a prime example. Firstly, it's incredibly accessible. The average person lives just 1.6 kilometers from a football club. Imagine that. You can practically walk to your local pitch. And with over 1.2 million players and 400,000 volunteers, it's a significant portion of the population actively involved. That kind of widespread participation creates a powerful network, maximizing that social and economic impact.
Okay, so we've got this incredible picture of amateur football's impact. It's building communities, boosting the economy, improving health, and we can actually measure all of this with this SROI model. But data is only useful if you actually do something with it, right? What's the practical application of all this? That's where things get really exciting. This SROI model isn't just some academic exercise. It's a powerful advocacy tool. Imagine going to a government official or a potential sponsor and saying, hey, amateur football is great. They might nod politely and move on. But if you can say, look, here's concrete evidence that amateur football generates $5.23 billion in social value annually, that's a game changer.
It's like giving ammunition to the people who are already passionate about supporting these local clubs. Are there any real-world examples of this model actually making a difference?
Absolutely. The Aberdeen Community Trust in Scotland used SROI data to secure a £250,000 annual grant. That's real money going directly to supporting grassroots football, all thanks to this model.
That's amazing. What other success stories have we seen?
Well, the Polish Football Federation managed to secure a whopping $10 million annually from their government for grassroots development, all thanks to the persuasive power of SROI data. The Italian and Scottish football associations have used SROI to highlight the importance of amateur football to their governments during times when funding was at risk.
So this SROI model is really changing the game, literally. It's shifting the focus from purely elite-level sport to recognizing the broader societal benefits of grassroots participation.
It's a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And it raises a fascinating question. If amateur football has such a profound impact, what does this tell us about the value of other community-based activities?
That's a great point. Could we be underestimating the positive ripple effects of all sorts of things that bring people together? Things that don't always get the attention or funding they deserve. I'm thinking community gardens, arts programs, volunteer groups. The possibilities are endless.
You're spot on. And this ties into a larger trend of recognizing the importance of social capital, holistic approaches to health, and the value of activities that might not have traditionally been seen as economically significant.
It's like we're finally starting to understand that a truly healthy and thriving society is built on more than just GDP.
Exactly. And what's so exciting is that we now have the tools to measure and demonstrate that value, making a compelling case for investing in the things that truly matter.
This has been incredibly eye-opening. We came in thinking about football, and now we're talking about a whole new way of valuing community and well-being.
That's the beauty of these deep dives. You never know where they'll lead, and what surprising connections you'll uncover.
Well, I, for one, am eager to keep exploring. But before we get too carried away, let's delve a bit deeper into those specific health benefits associated with amateur football. We threw around some big numbers earlier, but I'm curious to unpack them a bit more. What exactly is it about kicking a ball around? That translates to billions in healthcare savings.
That's a great place to pick up. We know physical activity is good for you, but the UEFA Grow model helps us understand how amateur football stacks up against other forms of exercise and the specific health outcomes it promotes.
Okay, so let's unpack those healthcare savings. We know it's a big chunk of that $5.23 billion total, but what's driving those savings?
The model breaks it down into several categories. For example, reduced risk of cardiovascular disease and diabetes alone accounts for over $366 million in annual savings in the Netherlands.
Wow, that's a significant chunk, and I'm guessing it's not just about the physical exertion. There's got to be something more to it.
You're right. There's a growing body of research that highlights the mental and emotional benefits of team sports, particularly for young people.
So it's about teamwork, camaraderie, a sense of belonging, things that go beyond just physical fitness.
Exactly. And those factors have a measurable impact on mental health. The UEFA Grow model estimates annual savings of over $42 million in the Netherlands, related to improved mental well-being among amateur footballers.
It's like this built-in support system. You're part of a team. You've got people who share your passion, and you're developing skills like communication and cooperation that are valuable in all aspects of life. No wonder they're seeing such a positive impact on mental health.
And then there's that fascinating category of subjective well-being, which encompasses everything from a sense of purpose and accomplishment to simply enjoying the game and the social connections it fosters.
That's the part that's always hard to measure, right? The feeling of joy, the sense of camaraderie. It's not something you can easily quantify, yet it's clearly a huge part of the equation.
And that's what makes the UEFA Grow model so remarkable. It manages to capture those intangible benefits, putting a price tag of $2.1 billion on the positive impact of amateur football on overall well-being in the Netherlands. That's a powerful statement about the holistic value of this seemingly simple activity.
It really challenges our assumptions about what constitutes value in the first place. We often get so caught up in the economic bottom line, we forget about the things that truly contribute to a fulfilling life.
It's about recognizing that our well-being is multifaceted, and that investing in activities that promote social connection, physical activity, and a sense of purpose is just as important as investing in our economy.
It's a powerful message, and one that I think we could all benefit from hearing. But before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, I want to circle back to something you said earlier. You mentioned that other sporting organizations are starting to use SROI models. Is this a trend that's catching on beyond football?
Absolutely. In fact, the source highlights some interesting examples of how other sports are leveraging this approach. The Premier League, for instance, is using SROI to understand the impact of its community outreach programs. And the AFL in Australia is applying the model to assess the value of Grassroots Aussie rules football.
So it's not just about replicating what UEFA has done, it's about adapting the model to different sports and contexts.
Exactly. And it's not limited to professional sports either. Organizations like Sport England, which is responsible for grassroots sports development in England, are using SROI to make the case for increased funding and support for a wide range of activities.
It seems like this idea of measuring social return on investment is really gaining traction. It's like a whole new lens for understanding the value of things we often take for granted.
And it's a powerful tool for advocacy. By presenting concrete data about the broader benefits of community-based activities, we can make a stronger case for their support, whether that's from governments, businesses, or philanthropic organizations.
It's like we're moving beyond intuition and good intentions to a more evidence-based approach to supporting the things that truly matter.
And that shift in thinking has the potential to transform the way we invest in our communities. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's take a closer look at some of those other European countries where the UEFA GROW model has been applied. What are some of the common threads that emerge when we look beyond the Netherlands?
That's a great question. We know the Dutch case is impressive, but is it unique? Or are there similar patterns emerging in other parts of Europe?
Let's dive into those findings and see what insights we can uncover. It's fascinating to see how this model plays out across different countries. UEFA has actually applied its SROI model in 25 European countries. And the results are pretty remarkable. They found a cumulative social value of over 39 billion annually.
Wow, that's a huge number. So the Dutch example wasn't just a fluke. There's a broader pattern here across Europe. So what are some of the key takeaways from those other studies?
One of the most consistent findings is that amateur football often delivers more economic value than professional leagues. For instance, a study in Germany found that amateur football clubs generate like 3 times more value than all 18 Bundesliga clubs combined.
Really? That really challenges our perception of where the real economic power lies in the world of football. You know, we tend to focus on the big leagues, the sponsorships, the media deals, but it's the grassroots level. That's often the real economic engine.
Yeah, it's a reminder that investing in grassroots development isn't just about, the love of the game, but also about supporting the economic well-being of communities. These aren't just like hobby clubs. They're active contributors to local economies.
It makes you wonder if we're allocating resources in the right way. Are we overly focused on the elite few at the expense of the many who participate at the grassroots level?
That's a valid question. And it's one that the SROI model helps us address. It allows us to compare the return on investment for different levels of sports participation, giving us a more balanced perspective on where our funding should go.
It's like we're finally seeing the whole ecosystem, not just the glamorous tip of the iceberg. But let's step back from the economic side for a moment and talk about some of the challenges facing amateur football today. We've been focusing on positive impact, but I'm sure there are hurdles as well.
Absolutely. Despite the undeniable value of amateur football, many clubs struggle with, funding, resources, and volunteer recruitment.
Yeah, that's a familiar story, unfortunately. We often hear about local sports programs facing budget cuts or struggling to find coaches and volunteers.
And that's where the SROI model can be a real game changer. Instead of just pleading for support, clubs can now present hard data about the economic and social benefits they bring to the community. It gives them a stronger voice in advocating for their needs.
It's like we're equipping them with the tools to fight for their survival, to demonstrate their worth in a way that resonates with decision makers.
Precisely. And those success stories we discussed earlier, the Aberdeen Community Trust securing that grant, the Polish Football Federation getting millions in government funding, they show that this approach can actually work.
It's proof that data can be a powerful ally in the fight for grassroots sports. But I'm curious, beyond securing funding, how else is this SROI model being used to support amateur football?
It's being used to guide strategic decision-making, to prioritize investments, and to measure the effectiveness of different programs. For example, a club might use SROI data to decide whether to invest in new equipment or to focus on developing a youth coaching program.
So it's not just about getting more money, it's about using that money wisely to maximize impact.
Exactly. And it's about demonstrating accountability to funders and stakeholders, showing them that their investment is making a real difference.
It's a much more sophisticated approach than simply relying on, gut feeling or anecdotal evidence. But I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, this idea that amateur football might be a unique case. Are there any insights from the UEFA Grow model that suggest these benefits might not translate to other sports or activities?
That's a great question. While football is certainly a popular and widely played sport, the underlying principles of the SRI model can be applied to any activity that generates social value.
So it's not about the sport itself, it's about the broader concept of community engagement and the ripple effects it creates.
Precisely.
Right.
Think about any activity that brings people together, promotes physical and mental well-being, and contributes to the local economy. Whether it's a community garden, a dance class, or a volunteer group, the SROI model can help us understand and articulate its true value.
It's like we're expanding the definition of worth. Beyond purely financial metrics, we're recognizing that social and health outcomes are just as valuable, if not more so.
It's a shift in perspective, and one that has the potential to revolutionize the way we invest in our communities.
Yeah.
But before we delve too deeply into those broader implications, I want to address something you mentioned earlier. You raised the question of whether the success of the SROI model in Europe might be due to cultural factors, or whether these benefits are truly universal. That's an important point, and one that deserves careful consideration.
You're right. We've been talking a lot about Europe, but does this model have the same potential in other parts of the world? Are there cultural or societal factors that might influence its effectiveness?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay, so we've talked big numbers, global trends, but let's bring it back down to earth for a moment. I'm ready for those human stories you promised. What are some real life examples of how amateur football is making a difference in people's lives?
One story that really stuck with me is from a small town in Wales. There was this struggling local pub that was on the verge of closing down, and then it became the go-to spot for local amateur football clubs, post-match gatherings, and suddenly you had this influx of players, families, supporters, bringing life and revenue back into the pub. And it ended up saving the business, and it became a real community hub, all thanks to that connection with the football club.
I love that. It's a perfect example of how those economic ripples extend beyond the pitch itself. It's not just about the money spent on the game. It's about those social interactions that happen around it and the way that can revitalize local businesses and spaces.
Exactly. And it's not just about pubs and businesses. There was another study that followed a group of young people who were at risk of dropping out of school and getting involved in crime. And they joined a local amateur football club. And the transformation was incredible. They developed discipline, teamwork skills, a sense of belonging, things they weren't finding elsewhere. Many of them went on to graduate and pursue further education or meaningful employment.
It's amazing how something as simple as being part of a team can have such a profound impact on a young person's trajectory. It gives them structure, support, a sense of purpose. It's almost like an intervention, but in a positive and empowering way.
Yeah, it highlights the power of sport as a social tool, as a way to reach young people who might be disengaged from traditional educational or social structures, and it underscores the importance of investing in those community-based programs that provide safe and supportive environments for young people to thrive.
We often talk about the importance of early intervention, and it seems like amateur football, in many ways, is providing just that. But it's not just about youth, is it? We've touched on the mental health benefits, and I imagine those are relevant across all age groups.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a growing body of research highlighting the mental health benefits of team sports for adults as well. It's about the social connections, the sense of camaraderie, the endorphin rush of physical activity. All of these factors contribute to a sense of well-being that can be especially important as we age.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I've always been a bit of a lone wolf when it comes to exercise, but there's something about being part of a team, working towards a shared goal that's incredibly motivating and rewarding.
Yeah, it taps into our innate need for connection and belonging. And it provides a sense of accomplishment that goes beyond individual achievement. And let's not forget the physical health benefits. We tend to think of professional athletes as the epitome of fitness, but regular participation in amateur football can be incredibly beneficial for maintaining a healthy weight, improving cardiovascular health, and reducing the risk of chronic diseases.
It's a reminder that you don't have to be a professional athlete to reap the rewards of physical activity, even a casual game of football with friends. can have a significant impact on your health and well-being.
And the beauty of amateur football is that it's accessible to people of all ages and abilities. You don't need specialized equipment or expensive training. All you need is a ball and a willingness to participate.
It's a truly inclusive activity, and that's part of what makes it so special. But I want to come back to something we touched on earlier, the ethical considerations of using this SROI model. We've talked about the potential for good, but what are some of the risks we need to be aware of? How can we ensure that this model is used responsibly and ethically?
Well, one of the key concerns is that the SROI model could be used to justify funding cuts to programs that don't demonstrate a high economic return, even if they provide significant social or cultural value.
So a community theater group that brings joy to hundreds of people, but doesn't generate a lot of revenue, might be deemed less valuable than a local football club. That has a measurable impact on health and the economy.
That's the risk. And it's why it's so important to remember that the SROI model is just one tool among many. It should be used to inform decision-making, but not to dictate it. We need to consider the broader social, cultural, and ethical implications of our choices, not just the bottom line.
It's about using data responsibly, understanding its limitations, and recognizing that some things are simply priceless.
Exactly. And it's about ensuring that the voices of the community are heard in these decisions. The people who benefit from these programs are the ones who truly understand their value, and their perspectives need to be taken into account.
It's about collaboration, transparency, and a commitment to using data to empower, not to exclude.
Well said. It's about recognizing that the true measure of a society's success is not just its economic output, but the well-being of its people, the strength of its communities, and the opportunities it provides for everyone to thrive.
That's a beautiful vision. And it seems like amateur football, despite its humble origins, has a lot to teach us about building a better world.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most impactful solutions are found in the simplest of things, people coming together, sharing a passion, and supporting each other.
This has been an incredible journey. We started with a simple question about the value of amateur football, and we ended up exploring the very foundations of a healthy and thriving society.
It just goes to show that you never know where a deep dive will lead you and what hidden gems of knowledge you'll uncover along the way.
Well, I, for one, am feeling inspired to get out there and find a local football club to support. Who knows? Maybe I'll even dust off my old boots and join in on the fun.
I might just join you. And for our listeners, we leave you with this thought. What small step can you take today to support a community-based activity that brings you joy or makes a difference in your neighborhood?
Remember, even the smallest gesture can have a ripple effect, contributing to a more vibrant, healthy, and connected world. Keep exploring, keep learning, and as always, keep diving deep